Next up, I have communications and presentation of certificate.
Yeah, so I have, one of the things that the mayor is wanting to do is make sure that people who are serving on boards and commissions know how appreciated they are. This is a time where service in the public sphere is more challenging. And people are volunteering their time and their expertise and their passion for the library. And she just wanted to present all of you with a recognition and thank you personally for really everything that you are doing every day to support the library and to serve the people of Boise well. So I will, didn't really think about this ahead of time, but we can pass things down and just really want to pass along her real thanks and appreciation for all that you do.
All right, thank you so much. It's very thoughtful. I think we're all happy to serve. Next up, I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I read the minutes and feel they accurately captured the proceedings of the April 10th meeting, and I move that we approve them as written.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
We're gonna move to.
Okay, we're gonna roll call on all our votes. Should we get a roll call? Sure.
Kamal. Yes. Lenny.
Yes.
Clemens.
Aye.
Kuzinski.
Yes.
Pantera.
Yes. Thank you, motion approves. Next up, consent agenda. As a reminder, all matters on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved in a single motion. If anyone elects, they may ask that an item be removed and considered separately. That being said, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Could we get a roll call?
Kamal. Yes. Lenny.
Yes.
Lemons.
Yes.
Kuzinski.
Yes.
Pantera. All
Yes.
in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Great. Next up, we have a report from Zach Monahan, Friends of the Boise Public Library. Is he here? There he is.
I am.
Hi, Zach.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be brief. I wasn't able to attend in April, so I did want to give an update that in March we held a pop-up sale at Tree Fort. That event was kind of a first of its kind for our organization. The first time we've done a sale at an event that wasn't ours and outside the library. We want to experiment more with these types of pop-up sales to reach different audiences, raise our community profile, recruit volunteers, and get more donations. Also, sales are a benefit, but not really the primary objective of these. So we look forward to doing more events like that in the future. We also just finished the April auction. That went from April 25th to, I think, May 5th, I believe. I don't have the final numbers yet, but I can confirm that I spent too much money at the auction. And we had over 2,600 in sales entering the final weekend, so I expected that increased substantially from there. We are participating in the summer reading kickoff at Jump on May 18th. We will be providing a free book to anyone who wants one, and we will also be providing bookstore gift certificates as program rewards. And then in addition, to support the library, we will be selling the summer reading shirts at some of our events coming up. You can get one at the bookstore or the Bound Crossing sale, which I'll mention. It's a limited opportunity to style like the library staff, who I believe are wearing those shirts today. And then lastly, we do have an upcoming sale at Bound Crossing, May 22nd to May 25th. May 22nd is the members only day. So if you want the good stuff, you'll need to join or rejoin the Friends. That's all I have for today. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one quick one for you, Zach. This is Rebecca. Will you be making the summer reading t-shirts available in youth sizes? I have a couple kiddos who might be interested in having some.
Yes, we have purchased a variety of sizes, from youth sizes all the way through adult sizes. So we will have pretty much everything that is available.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to drop off now.
Thanks, Zach.
Bye-bye.
Next, we have our foundation report with Camille Franks, the chair of the foundation.
Thank you. Good morning. We are super happy to report on a $50,000 donation in April to the library. This fulfilled our pledge for a total of $80,000 that is dedicated to this year's Boise Comic Arts Fest, or BCAF. So we are very happy about that. Our next meeting is tomorrow, and that is all I have for this month. Any questions?
Congratulations on the
Yeah,
gift.
congratulations.
Thank you
We
so
are
much.
very appreciative.
Thank you. We're excited too.
Thanks. Okay, next up, Director Report, Jessica.
Yeah, I just have a couple quick things I wanted to highlight. First, I forgot to, when we were handing out your certificates of appreciation, if you would like us to purchase a frame for you, we'd be happy to, but we didn't want to make that presumption. So just follow up with me or Carrie if you would like a frame for your certificate. I was very excited to share a note with you about this last week, and unfortunately she had a conflict, was not able to be here, but our very own Huda Sheltry in her mover and shaker. Oops, wrong page. It's been a while since I've done story time, but we're just so delighted that one of our own had that really wonderful national recognition for the work that she has done. And I know that all of you are so appreciative of her work as well. It was mentioned earlier, but we're really hoping that you can join us on Saturday, the 18th for the summer reading and learning celebration from Jump from 10 to 2. But another event that I wanted to call attention to is our second of our 6-part writer in residency. This is our program with the Cabin and the Department of Arts and History. We have Heidi Gray, who is doing workshops on refilling your creative well. And she will be tonight at Bound Crossing. If that works for you, they're also all, as always, on our events page. And then I just wanted to thank all of you who were able to join us in person and who are braving our parking lot repair. We will be for the next 2 months, really trying to, do that work as quickly as possible in some staging. So the idea is to try to keep at least 2/3 of the parking lot open at all time. But as you can see from your own experience, it's very challenging to find a spot, particularly around some of our busiest times. Story time, right after school, the times when people are coming in. So our community engagement team is doing a lot of public outreach about how to navigate that. We're asking for people's patience and understanding. We're also saying, hey, this is a great time to explore other branches, explore our digital resources, come to our offsite events. But just really appreciate everybody hanging in with us as we make some of these necessary repairs so that we've got a parking lot that is safe. And then, I just also want to really thank Reshma for willingness to be appointed. As you know, she and Ron started last year. She walked into a term that was already ongoing, so that's why she is now being appointed to a full 5-year term. That just really appreciate her contributions. And wow, it's really nice that we'll have we won't be constantly onboarding new board of trustees. So I really congratulate all of you as well, because we're really excited about this group of trustees. So with that, take any questions.
Questions for Jessica?
I just have a comment as I was reading through the report. I just wanted to call out and personally acknowledge, as somebody who works in the healthcare and social service sector, my deep appreciation for the community partner work that's been done. I know that this is something that's done every month and have had the pleasure of seeing some of the pop-up events and the partnerships with Catch and Boise Bicycle Project and a number of others, the WCA. But I know that we often talk about what is the role of the library. But being a connection point for our most vulnerable folks and providing resources to the community, we see the need in the folks that we serve in my organization. And I just really love and appreciate the attention to that work. And I know it takes a village to do it. And I also wanted to call out Dia de los Niños, because I also think that this library is so intent and focused on providing an inclusive environment and acknowledging the cultural differences of the many folks that live in this community. And I just think it's incredible that we have a particular event to really make people feel welcome and invited. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for that tremendous partnership work.
It's a great call out. Thank you.
I have a question, if I could, about the construction projects. So
You should,
should I wait?
I think you can wait, we have the facilities plan, and
Great.
I would ask Sean to answer it anyways.
Okay, the next up is an educational item. It's one of my favorite programs the library does all year, so I'm really excited to hear about the summer reading program this year.
Yeah, so we will start. Jackie, if you want to come and sit at the table with us. So I've got two of the fabulous youth librarians, or youth services staff. So Mackie's gonna talk to you about the summer reading and learning program. She's gonna really explain the strategy behind it, why it's important, how we're structuring it. And then Emma Ashby will come in and share some of the work that we're doing, particularly with summer reading and learning grants. And that is really some of the work that we've been building on for the last couple of years on targeting communities that we haven't reached before.
Yeah, I just want to say something quickly about the shirts since we've been talking about them a lot. That in case you didn't know, they were the design was done by a local artist, Julia Green, and that, to my knowledge, is the first time we've done that on a summer reading shirt. Josh, okay. And so yeah, I think it's gotten good feedback, and maybe we can work that into the budget every year. I like that. Our CE people do amazing work on stuff, but it was fun to go outside for that. So. Yeah, so I am the lead of the reading team this year, and that part of that job is organizing the summer reading program. So I just kind of wanted to take you through. You can go to the next slide, actually. Oh, I can go to the next slide myself. Actually a professional at this.
It was not working out.
There it is. Okay, so we kind of decided to revamp, clarify our goals and objectives this year for the summer reading team. Our overarching slogan for the last few years has been make reading a fun daily habit, and that continues to be our slogan. And then our overarching goal is to deliver an engaging summer reading program for all ages, to increase access to books, counter summer learning loss, and inspire community around the joy of reading. But then we wrote some objectives, which we haven't really had for the past couple of years, and we broke it down by age. So for babies and early learners, building those home libraries are super important for those earliest learners. So getting books in the hands of those youngest readers. And then recognizing caregivers as their child's first teacher. So we do a lot of messaging around early literacy, things that people can do at home. For school age, it's really about getting those high interest titles in the hands of kids. So pleasure reading is the most important thing for that age, because that's really the age where you can lose a lot of kids because they're being forced to read things they don't want to, and you have to kind of counter that with letting them read things they want to. And then combating summer slide, which I'll talk about in a bit. Teens, we really want to get them into the library. We don't see a ton of teens in the library, they're here and there, but summer reading is a good time to bring them in with new programming, and then again, pleasure reading. Adults, we broke down into adults and adults who are caregivers of young children, because they have very different objectives. Obviously, pleasure reading, a sense of community with those book club programming, things like that. And then rediscover the joys of reading. I can't tell you how many adults come in and are like, I can do this. And they're like, I haven't read a book in years. I'm like, here's your free book. Try it. I think you're gonna like it. And then adults who are caregivers, it's really important for them to model pleasure reading for their kids. Studies have shown that the more a child sees their adult in their life reading for pleasure, the more likely they are going to be reading for pleasure, and then providing opportunities for those adults to rediscover the joys of reading. Okay, so the number one question I'm going to ask is, why do you buy so many books? Why do you spend so much money on books? Like, what is the point of this? So I want to tell you why we do that. So benefits of reading. We've probably all heard a lot of these: increased brain activity, reduced stress, increased empathy. These are all very important for these kind of chaotic times we live in, especially right now surrounding libraries. And so there's nothing better than increasing empathy and reducing stress for people. There's early literacy benefits for adults reading. So when children see adults reading a variety of books in their home, they're more likely to mirror that behavior. And then sharing books as a family we really encourage that with summer reading. So we have a lot of adults who pick kids' books. We have a lot of adults who come in and ask for reader's advisory for books they can read as a family, books they can listen to as a family and on a road trip. And that's really getting more complex titles and literature than a child would be able to access on their own. And it's a bonding experience. So we help facilitate that through summer reading. That is me as a snail. That's our Halloween music and movement. It's always very popular. So summer learning loss, you've probably heard of this. They started doing studies back in the 80s. And so it's really that loss of learning that happens during the summer months when kids aren't in school. Children in low-income houses are hit the hardest. It accounts for 2/3 of the 9th grade achievement gap between higher income kids and lower income kids. Students from low-income households with access to books over the summer see significantly more gains in reading scores from spring to fall than their higher income peers. So it really is important to target those kids, get them their books. So some ways we do that is you get a free book for signing up. So it's not lost on me that we have people that will sign up and not do the program. That's okay. I want them to have that book. That's what's important. And then right now we are full steam doing outreach to schools, and we really we try and target those schools that are underserved. We don't use Title I funding for a variety of reasons, which I can answer, but and so we go in and we visit those classrooms and we talk one-on-one with those kids because we think it's really important for those kids to hear about this program. And then differences in children's summer learning experiences. So the library programming they can access, and this program as a whole can really have long-term effects on who graduates, who goes to college, things like that. So summer reading's role in combating summer learning loss. These are 2 of our prizes for this year, and a bunch of our books that are upstairs that we're sorting. So volume of reading is important. So despite having to fit more people into kind of a similar funding stream every year, we have stuck with that 3 books is important to get kids who finish the program. We don't want to give them fewer than that. Second, children must have easy access, literally fingertip access. So building those home libraries, getting those board books into babies' hands, getting those high interest titles, they have to have them in their home. So they're easy to access. So there's no barrier to them saying, I feel like reading today. Great, you've got something to read. And then giving books and other types of print material to children causes more favorable attitudes towards reading greater volume of reading. And then giveaway programs also appear to improve children's motivation to read. There are some studies that are like, this isn't working. The important part is that it's not just prizes, it's the books. So as long as that is our main focus, which we have maintained it as our main focus, is getting books in the hands of kids and adults, then they've proven to work. So I think I'll have questions after Emma, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you should probably stay. Close by.
yeah,
Okay, I'll just wait back.
I'll walk back.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna be talking more specifically about the ESSER funding that we've gotten. This is our 2nd year doing it, and it will be our last year, unfortunately. But the ESSER funding is Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. So it is very geared towards mitigating the impacts from COVID on summer learning loss. And the way that they're asking us to do that is reducing barriers to learning over the summer, providing
programming from libraries and making sure that it's more accessible and not just in the libraries. And when we're talking about learning, we're talking about social emotional health, mental health, STEM, art, literacy. So the full scope of learning and helping kids be able to excel when they go back to school in the fall. Last summer, we were able to reach almost 2,000 kids with our program. And so we're looking forward to another great summer. So I'm gonna do a quick recap of last year and some of the things that we were able to do. So we hired 2 interns last summer so that we had better staff capacity to do a ton of outreach. We were able to go to the summer parks, that's the 3rd one on there, where free lunches are served for kids ages 1 to 18. We were also able to go to a few of the summer schools, which is where most of our English language learning students go. And then we also partnered with the International Rescue Committee to provide programming. And the especially cool thing about partnering with them is that we've continued that partnership throughout the year. So Hillcrest was able to do story times with them throughout the year. We have had library tours where we set people up with library cards and give them information about what our public libraries do and provide for the community. We have also had school-age students come in during their winter break and their spring break and do STEM activities in here. I think during a meeting, you guys got to hear some of them having a lot of fun. So we've been able to continue that throughout the year. Additionally, part of the funding has provided staff training. So both last year and this year, we've had staff go through training. It's called BEVS, it's Building Equity-Based Summers, and have those conversations about equity. And that has influenced some of the summer reading changes that are happening this year. Okay, so this year, it's gonna look very similar. We're hiring interns again. We've got 1 returning from last year. So I feel like that is a huge sign that it was a good thing. She's coming back and we're in the process with HR getting our interns hired. We will be doing summer lunch programming again. And all of those same STEM, art, literacy activities. We read a story at these programs. We bring activities in to help kids with that. Social emotional learning is both interacting with other kids and building that confidence for the summer school programs and working with students in the IRC. It's having a safe place to practice English and getting to just interact with other adults, which also gets them comfortable when they're back in school. We also share about the summer reading program and make it more accessible by bringing that to them. It's also about educating our community members about the library programs and services. If they're not able to come into the library, it's still giving them a space that they can learn about what we do, both online and in person. Another thing that we are really hoping to is to have people from our branches join for this outreach if they have the capacity, so that these kids and families are seeing familiar faces. So when they go into the library, they have people that they know and they recognize. And then another big thing we're doing this year with our interns is we're going to have them start some initial steps towards creating a community asset map. So this will be an informational visual map of some of the many resources that we have around our community for youth and families, so that we can use that throughout the year to partner with people who are doing similar work and have shared goals for us. So we're really excited about that as well. And then the last piece is with those building equity-based summers trainings that we've done, it's initiated a lot of conversations with staff about what that looks like, not just in summers, but throughout the year, and how we can really be working with our community to think about and create programs that are meeting their needs. So I'm going to end with a question for all of you. So over the past few years, we've worked to improve equitable access to our summer library programs using these trainings and this grant. So we are curious what opportunities all of you see for us to continue this work to reduce barriers, especially as we do go forward without funding from ESSER, so that we can really ensure that all Boise residents feel welcomed and able to participate in our summer programs.
That's the core question behind almost all libraries. We spent a lot of time talking about in the strategic plan, and I don't think I've got any easy answers or suggestions for you, but it's the right focus. Could you do a quick summary on the metrics you track to assess reach and impact?
Yeah, so last year we tracked who attended all of the parks, and how many books we gave out. Last year we had additional funding, so we were able to purchase books specifically for the program. We did towards the end of the summer, we had like poster boards with sticker charts for people to say like how it helped. If you are able to access our like recap of last summer, I don't know if that's somewhere, Kate, that we can access. It has really good stories of actual impacts on individual kids and how our interns really saw improvement in the communication, especially of our English language learners over the course of the summer, where they were talking more and they were engaging with staff more. So we tracked lots of numbers, and then we also did get some of those really like just emotional, to the heart, like impact that we had on our community members through having this program.
Okay, so you've got your own little set of system statistics, for lack of a
Yes.
better term, and you collect anecdotal evidence as it comes along.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So how much money was the grant? Yeah, so.
Was it 10,000?
Yeah, the first grant was about $20,000 and the
Yes.
second grant was $10,000. And Emma referenced the difference between the 2 years of funding was available. The 10,000 is the piece that is the intern piece. So that was, we were able to replicate that again this year. It was some of the materials and wraparound that, because we have the capacity through the training, we didn't need to do that same part, but we all were working that. How can we, knowing that we've got certain budget restrictions, how are we thinking about some of the trade-offs, and particularly the interns, because it did allow us, one, to be in the community more, but also to have, staff, we could have an intern helping with staff as well, which allowed us further reach and expansion.
Is there any thoughts in terms of going to outside sources for funding? Or is it thinking,
Do you have suggestions for outside sources that might be willing to
yeah,
have a pitch for this? Great. Okay,
Yeah.
let's follow up on that, because I do think it's a really, the science behind the model, the way that we've been able to incorporate it into our system, I think it's really solid. So it is really a matter of who could we approach that has a aligned mission and would be interested in working with us.
And I will add something exciting the city is doing this year is they are having a more robust intern program. So the interns at the end of the summer will be able to present to city leadership about what they've been doing. So get even more eyes on this program.
I wonder if there's even, well, I don't want to get too far down the pathway, but even having Boise State students, I mean, there's opportunities to get free interns. I know I get approached at my work a lot with, do you have a space and a place for a student to do some free work and get some school credit? So I think there might be some opportunity with service learning and some other connections. I'm so excited about your asset map. If I can help, let me know. And I think also some of those community partners, to your point, that have some interest may be able to help continue to expand that reach and broaden it into some of the folks that they're serving as well. So I think that's really exciting.
For the update,
Well done, ladies. Thank you.
May 18th at Jump.
Yeah, be there, be square.
Buy your shirts.
Thank you so much. I really, in particular, appreciated kind of the research in why we do this, and the reading that's really helpful, I think, when we speak back out to community members about the impacts. So thank you for all of that. Okay, next we have our master facilities plan update with Sheldon. I see you over there.
All right, President, board members, this is not nearly as inspiring as youth services, helping our community.
They are hard to follow.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
This is wildly important to help them do what they do.
And I'll talk to Carrie about community agenda.
Just wear a shirt.
I have shirt. Just a quick update. So, Sean Wilson, Public Works, filling in for Lindsay Erd, my colleague, who's running all of this. You'll see her more, as she's kind of the orchestrator of everything. But want to give you a quick update on everything kind of capital happening, everything capital spending. So these are, one-time, budget dollars that are getting reinvested, within this area.
Wow.
All right, so under construction, we have quite a bit. We did complete the roofs on both the one story and the 4-story, which was a huge task. I mean, it's a really large investment. We got the fire pump replaced, which our insurers are really happy about because it was a very old pump. Within the 4-story here, first and second floor restrooms are complete. We say a couple outstanding punch items. That's just like little, paint touch-ups, that sort of stuff. But I hope you had a chance to look at them. They look fantastic. It's definitely a good investment for us. Third floor, as you heard during the meeting, is under construction. I heard the drill going while we I'm like, yep, which is my life. Shooting for end of June on that. 4th floor restroom, June to late August. So that one will, the 4th floor will piggyback into a tenant improvements on the 4th floor. So once we get into the restroom and the heat and ventilation, everything above the ceiling, that'll carry on into tenant improvements on the 4th floor, which is the next bullet. The 1st and 4th floor tenant improvements, 4th floor this summer, that's the target. That'll set up just better space for staff. And 1st floor, that is construction July to end of September. 1st floor is still kind of in the works a little bit. So we do know like circulation desk is not accessibly compliant ADA. And there's some other things on the 1st floor. We're also doing a design right now on the 1st floor for just general tenant improvements like youth services and other areas. But as always, here's what we want, here's the budget. And so there's going to be a lot of back and forth, like what can we afford, what makes sense? Are we dealing with their accessibility issues? Are we dealing with plumbing, all that good stuff? So work in progress. Facilities planning. So as you all know, we hired Group 4. So they're consultants. They've been working away in the background. There's kind of different steps, and we have a real nice graphic I'll show next to this, but it's really like existing state, future stage, and how do we get to that future state? Those are kind of the steps with planning. First step is existing state. So Group 4 will be in town at the next board meeting, I think. So they'll come present, we're gonna meet the team. They do have a depth and breadth of knowledge. They're definitely a firm that does this. So we're really lucky to have them. Kind of going through existing state growth projections, level of service goals, like what does that future state look like? So we're working very close with our planning development services department. We have a new zoning code. And the new zoning code is going to dictate where's growth and how much growth, all that good stuff. So we're coordinating citywide. Solutions to close the gap. Those are really where do the investments go? Here's the future state 20 years out. Where do we start investing the dollars, and how do we come up with different alternatives and financial plans and a lot of stuff. And then what I like to point out in this is planning has become a lot more fluid lately. It's like historically it'd be like, here's a 20-year plan and you work towards it. But just things change, like there's a pandemic or there's a recession or whatever. So we're trying to create a plan that can adapt and get us to that location, the future state location. Generally, here's the schedule. Moves around a little bit, and I think during strategic plan we talked about this too. As we engage the community and really kind of hear from folks, sometimes want to hear more. So schedules move based on how much engagement and input we get. But really, kind of these first steps, and Group 4 calls it needs, strategies, and plans. So it's what are the needs, kind of, and that's the what's our existing state. What's the future look like for growth? Strategies. Okay, what are ways to get there? how can we fund it, where do we put services, and then an implementation plan for that. So the first sort of through August is mostly kind of baselining, where we are, where's the growth, all that good stuff. And I assume probably Group 4 will get more into this.
Yeah, and I want to say something about this, if I can interrupt, Sean. The first version of this master work plan that we discussed with Group 4 had that community and stakeholder engagement starting a lot earlier. And I actually asked for it to be moved after July 1st. And that is absolutely tied to the next item on our agenda, is we've got such an important public engagement that we need to do around the House Bill 710, and there's such confusion, and we weren't able to come up with a plan for a really in-depth stakeholder engagement about our facilities plan, when the number one question that we're asking about from our public is, are you banning books? Are you taking books? Like, we just can't do it at the same time. And so we actually were really concerned we might have to move everything, but Sean and Lindsay and Group 4 and I were able to really think, and actually with our community engagement partners, we're really able to think about, okay, how do we not lose, as like knowing we need to do really good, robust stakeholder and community engagement, how do we know when we can actually do that with the public that will be focused on that, but how do we not let that additional topic that we're all discussing derail some of the other pieces? So we had hoped that these would sort of be a little bit more concurrent, but I just was not comfortable trying to do two community conversations at the same time.
And we kind of hit on that a little bit. We want really authentic, community engagement for this. And so, because, we may need budget, we may need other things, and that's the community, definitely on board with it. So, that's that. We're keeping track. We're moving and pivoting as we need. Do the best we can, keep it moving. We're also, and I'm just a quick note, we're also trying to align this with other things going on in the city. So, Jessica and I talked about this quite a bit, library is planning, and we have PDS with the zoning code, and we have other, departments planning, and I think we're doing the best job we can to make sure that the citywide, we're doing a good planning effort. Future fiscal year work, so this is planned coming up. And I don't know, we're in the budget process right now with council. I asked for another big, this is kind of, it's been planned, here, in there, because we have to sequence the work, as you noticed, the construction here, parking lots here, it's like, we're trying to sequence it out, so it's not, Jess told me I can't shut the library down for a year to do it all. But we have another big chunk coming up in fiscal year 25 that we're requesting. And so just kind of going through what some of the future work looks like. 1-story plumbing, it's all early 70s vintage, like me. So we need to start swapping all that out. And the restrooms are not accessible, those need to be taken care of. We have some exterior upgrades, so kind of the boring stuff. We're just fixing the ground, making sure the envelope is sealed on the building, some exterior windows that are still windows. Electrical system, we have a really aging electrical system, so we need to swap out the entire guts of the electric system. I don't know what that'll look like in terms of operations, so you can imagine if you turn on the lights for a while, what's that mean for the building? Lighting, we still have some older school LED or older school lighting, so we're swapping that on LED. Continue remodel first floor services information desk. So we are in called schematic design, so it's about 30% design on the entire first floor services. Going through a pricing efforts, can we afford it? Just going through the trade-offs. HVAC, that's heating, ventilation, air conditioning upgrades, quite a bit of that. It's kind of the fundamental systems first floor. And then Lindsay's thinking project delivered in fiscal year 25. So a lot of the stuff on the first floor is dependent on approvals, fiscal year 25 budget, which we'll find out during the hearings this summer. If those get approved, then October 1st, we can start launching into like, okay, let's start getting contracts in place and sort of what's that next level of construction for the library. And then further out, I do have a site replacement plan. Is the parking lot, we're doing the repairs right now, but at some point we have to kind of replace the entire parking lot, drainage, site, everything. It's a couple years out as far as forecasting for the budget request. And we're still working through like, what does that mean? How much does it cost? All that good stuff. So we're putting concepts together for what that looks like. The reason we're kind of putting concepts together so early is want to make the correct budget request for fiscal year 26. But CCDC also is taking care of streetscapes on Capitol Boulevard later this year. And we want to line up, hey, what does the future parking lot look like with those streetscape improvements? So we have the right entry points, you know, and it's all working up there. There's exit here and there's an entrance here, and then the kind of totally makes sense. It's based on old parcel lines, it's very strange, but we want to inform CCDC's investment, get improvements in the right place as they do the streetscapes. Then we also, in partnership with CCDC, are doing a greenbelt realignment. So moving part of the memorial, getting the greenbelt to reduce interactions in that area. So that also ties to the parking lot. And then of course, the offices. So
I'm sorry, so last thing you said.
what's it?
I didn't hear, you said the offices or
The
something?
Wasp.
The WASPA Center.
Wasp Center.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So they're coming online, then we're trying to get the greenbelt done, CCDC's doing capital, and then we're trying to get the parking lot set up, so. We're kind of I know, like, I was running around trying to find parking when I got here, I'm just like, oh, we're kind of in the beginning a little bit, and actually could get a little worse before it gets better. But they're all fantastic investments for this area. Like, this will be a really excellent campus once all these investments take place. So, that questions?
So, assuming you've got everything finished in, say, 2026. What is your sense of how long that's going to carry this facility? I'm thinking they'll keep us in good stead for 10 years, for 5 years, for 20 years. What is this going from the period where the thinking was this building was going to be torn down and replaced with something significantly different to, okay, let's at minimum shore up this building and make it much more functional, et cetera, and sort of trying to get a sense of the time frame of this is going to keep us in good stead for a period of time. Do you anticipate?
President, board member, it is it's a little bit different on the investment. So, like, when we replace like the electrical system or the heating and cooling system, typically you're going to get 30, 40, 50 years out of it. And we have to because they're just aged out. So definitely need to reinvest. So, but some of the tenant improvements we're kind of being lighter on. Like, it's like, oh, we know we need to fix these, keep that 10-year horizon. Let's let the planning catch up. So we know kind of the face of whatever the future looks like. So dialing back on some of those like tenant improvements and that sort of stuff, but kind of like our roofs, we had to replace them, and they're like 30-year warranty. So it's kind of a different, depends on what it is, I guess.
So you're thinking that what I'll call the structural HVAC, electric, roof, parking, et cetera, we're probably good for 20 to 30 years plus. The tenant improvement kinds of things you'll be looking at what the consultants say in terms of the needs, et cetera, that may influence beyond the things that are anticipated.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. The kind of the systems I call big systems that are past their life. You're gonna get a bunch long, very long iteration out of, but we're being sensitive with kind of improvements to the planning. Some of them we have to do, the accessibility and circulation does, like I really like want to fix that. So,
Obviously, bathrooms and
yeah.
ADA stuff. So. Thank you, appreciate it.
Other questions? Thank you, Sean. Brian, did you have a question?
No.
Oh. Okay, next up, we have policy review of section 5.02. These are the policy changes necessitated by House Bill 710. You'll note we are asking for a motion to approve subject for STEM. Everybody needs to be comfortable with it, and I wanted to speak to that a little bit. First, I want to note only the policy receives board approval. The form is provided for input, and it's seen as essentially implementing the policy that we are approving. So that's here for input, but the only piece that needs our approval is the updated policy. I wanted to say thank you and just make everybody aware that many library staff members, Jessica, Kathy, Ed, others have spent a significant amount of time working on this policy very thoughtfully. And I think put together a good policy for us. I want to reiterate that we have a robust collection development policy we recently approved. It does not, generally speaking, permit obscene materials to be in our collection. We've stated this all the way through that this policy really isn't necessary to protect minors because we don't carry these materials. That said, we do still need to make some changes to comply with the House bill. I want to note the library's mission, which again was developed with community input to be responsive to our community, is to provide access and opportunity for everyone by connecting people to ideas, information, and community. So we have, in my mind, a duty to provide people with access, and our approach has been to, together with that broad access, to provide parents with tools to determine what's appropriate for their family within the bounds of constitutionally protected free speech. Again, we don't have obscene materials. So with all that said, I think this policy does a really good job of balancing our mission, our First Amendment protections with what we really need to do to comply with House Bill 710. I know Jessica's put together a really good presentation, so I'd like to suggest that we hold questions and comments to the end of Jessica's presentation because she's going to walk through in more detail all of those aspects. And then we'll open it up to comments and questions.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Scroll down, maybe? So many presentations.
I know.
It looks, yeah, there it is. I'm sorry, Carrie, we really gave you a workout today. So yeah, we're going to talk about the implementation of the Children's School and Library Protection Act. I am going to start. See if I can,
I might have to start again.
you might have to start again. Okay. As Vicki pointed out, what I want to do is really set the stage for your discussion about our new policy. First, I want to review the direction that you all provided us as trustees in the April meeting. I think this is particularly important. Rishma was not able to attend that meeting, but did watch it. And so this is a great opportunity for you as the five of you as trustees who will be implementing this with us to really be on the same page for that. As Nikki mentioned, we do want to make sure we review the relevant First Amendment principles. I'm going to provide you a high-level overview of the recommended changes to the policy. Talk a little bit about what happens between here and July 1st. And then as she forecasted, we would like to request your approval for the updated policy. So starting with the trustee feedback, when we met in April, these are the real takeaways that we have from that discussion. First is, and you referenced this, implement this new law while upholding the library's mission values. And that really was critical. We had said all along We don't believe that this bill is necessary. We don't have some materials in our collection, so not lose sight of that. And then you also asked us to make sure we understand other applicable laws and how they interact. And then the last 2 points I thought were really important and have really driven a lot of the decisions that we made. And first, that one was, how do we use this as an opportunity to be as transparent as possible with the public? Why are we making these changes? What are the things that we're weighing? What are the values that are come into this? So this is also why you see so much more wording in our policy and our forms, is because of that opportunity that you really highlighted for us. And then the other piece was making these interactions with the public as easy as possible for frontline staff. That really was such an important piece. This is a complex issue. There's a lot of emotion around it. None of us are First Amendment lawyers. How do we simplify or at least make that point of engagement with our frontline staff and people who are interested in materials as frictionless as possible? So I'll point out a couple of ways where we're trying to do this as we go along. And then this, the values piece, making sure that we really call out, and you see reference to that in some of our materials about the values of the library, providing information services and programs that are free and open to all, creating a respectful, safe, and inspiring space for the community, holding the right to privacy and the freedom to read, seek, and hold different points of view. This is really that starting point that we wanted to, that you really made sure that when we were doing this work, we were grounded in those values. Moving on to that piece about some of the other relevant laws. This also was our starting point. What else applies to libraries, and really, what are the guiding principles that frame how libraries provide access to information? And so we'll start with the First Amendment. There is a First Amendment right to access to information. With that, the government cannot discriminate based on viewpoint. That would be discriminated based on content. Minors have First Amendment rights. We'll talk about that. And then libraries are designed for free-wheeling inquiry. I think you see that really strongly in our values. So I won't speak to that too much, but I'm going to really walk us through those first 3 points. So what is protected speech? What is that First Amendment? What does it protect, and how are those cornerstone concepts codified? So we're going to start with the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that says, Congress shall make no laws abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And that was applied to the states by the 14th Amendment. So that is really where we need to start, with the assumption that speech is protected. Bringing it closer to Idaho, every person, Article 1, Section 9 of the Idaho Constitution, every person may freely speak, write, and publish on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of that liberty. We'll talk about that as well. The government cannot restrict speech based on something that it doesn't agree with or doesn't like. And that is such a core tenet of the history of the United States. So this quote that this is Ed that suggested this quote, so I'm just good and transparent about that. The point of the First Amendment is that the majority preference must be expressed in some fashion other than silencing speech on the basis of content. And so that piece, just because something is something that you don't like, that is not a reason that we can prohibit access to it. It does raise the question, where has the government found places that you can limit speech? And so I want to call these out because these are very limited and they have specific definitions. And so these are really sort of the 4 areas where the government has categories where the government can prohibit or criminalize or deter or ban speech in these areas: defamation, libel, fighting words, and obscenity. And harmful to minors is a subsection of obscenities. And I think this is a really important point. I'm gonna refer to this multiple times. The harmful to minors definition is only valid because it relates to obscenities. It's not an expanded definition. It doesn't stand on its own. So this piece, I think, just really has been critical in how we have formed our policy. I'll spend a lot of time on obscenity and material harmful to minors. And I'll spend a lot of time on the definition because you see that definition directly in that policy. And that I think is something that's important for us to understand. What is the definition of obscenity and what is that definition to minors? So what is the definition of obscenity? And here's where I'll take you back in time to some of the court cases and opinions and really the discussions that were going on in the 50s and 60s and 70s that were grappling with this idea of what is obscenity and obscene materials. And despite how charming the phrase or the quote that I think a lot of people know of, well, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. The courts really wanted to make sure that the definition of obscenity was not a single person's opinion of something that was obscene, right? So they gave us this definition, you'll heard it, or this case, it's called the Miller test. So I'm sure you've heard this. I'll talk about Miller, I'll talk about Ginsburg. And this is where you see the court saying, you're right, you know, the definition of obscenity cannot be a single person's point of view. This is where we need to come up with a framework for that definition that can be more consistently applied and that can guide people and communities in understanding what that means. And so here's also where you start to see what's also referred to as that three-prong test. So those three prongs are, they all, for something to be obscene, all three of these apply. So whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work taken a whole appeals to the period interest. So in that period, the key law phrase is period interest. We'll define that in the next slide. And then whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual content defined by the applicable state law. So hold on to that because we're going to talk about the applicable state law in Idaho. And then whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So those three pieces all need to be in place for something to be obscene. Applies to period interest, patently offensive, and has no serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So that is the definition that was established in the early 70s. And really what that does is it has been used to set that community standard and has also been described as sort of hardcore pornography, what would be obscene. And this is where, to Nikki's point, we don't have this material in our library. It's not something that is of interest to our community. We would not make that available. So that is where we have said all along, we just don't have materials that meet that definition. So how does this apply to minors? Oh, I forgot the slide. What is the period interest? This is such an important, like period is not a word that you use every day, but it is important because period does, period interest does not just mean that someone is asking for or interested in sexual content. It is beyond that. It is a shameful or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion, and goes substantially beyond customary limits of candor and descriptions of or representations of such matter, and does not include a normal healthy interest in sex, right? So this is where a book about sex education is normal healthy interest in sex. Book about relationships, and no matter if it's two characters, male or female, male, female, that is a normal interest in sex. So again, these definitions are really making sure that we're protecting that community standard and defining obscene materials on the outskirts of that. Now, I'm moving on to how does this apply to minors? Again, so this is where that first slide that has the definition of obscenity, and then where courts have found that there is a viewpoint, I'm sorry, there is the how this applies to minors is very limited and it is a slight modification. So there's nothing that can be obscene for minors that is not obscene for adults and vice versa. If a piece of work is considered obscene, it's obscene no matter your age. The government can regulate minors' access to what would be borderline, but again, some real important modifications. And the first one in that is that you have to judge that obscene for minors taking the viewpoint of a reasonable, older, normal minor. That is really important. And I think this is one of the things that we heard a lot in public testimony. Obviously, what is of interest to a 6-year-old or applicable to a 6-year-old is different than an 8-year-old, which is different than a 10-year-old. But when we're looking at obscenities for minors, the guidance is to look at a reasonable, older, normal minor. And I think you'll see that actually we reference that idea in our policy in how important the role of libraries is in providing access to information for minors who are becoming adults and who are becoming their full selves. And so that role of making sure we're protecting their access to information, we've referenced in our new policy. And then the other thing that, that is really important is when you are applying that third prong of the Miller test to have serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for a legitimate minority of normal older adolescents, right? You've got to be looking at that group when you're applying the obscenity, the harmful to minors modification to the Miller. So, all right. So now we've got the Miller, which is what is obscenities. We've got Ginsburg, which is how does material harmful to minors relate to that. And now we're going to add the Idaho Code. And the Idaho Code will include that specific part that was, what is the applicable state law. So I want to walk you through this because now you see the Idaho Code that's talking about sexual content, but you'll still see the Miller and Ginsburg in that, right? Material harmful to minors means material that contains nudity, sexual context, sexual excitement, and sadomasochistic abuse that appeals to the prurient interest of minors as judged by the average person applying community standards. So again, prurient interest, community standard, that average person. The second part, depicting or describing nudity, sexual context, sexual excitement, sadomasochistic abuse that is patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community, but is suitable for minors. So again, so that same thing about, we've got prurient interest, patently offensive, and then, coming as would considered as a whole in the context does not possess serious literary, artistic, political, and scientific value for a legitimate minority of normal older minors. So this is all the real standard definition of material harmful to minors that has been applied since sort of the 70s, and we've been following this in our collection development policy. And I do just want to really highlight this piece about minors having First Amendment rights and how important that is. Speech that is neither seen to use or accept subject to other legitimate cannot be suppressed solely to protect the young from ideas or images the legislative body thinks is unsuitable to them. In most circumstances, the values protected by the First Amendment are no less applicable when government seeks to control information flow to minors. There's a real, there's a lot of case laws at the bottom of this that talk about how important it is to actually protect First Amendment information for minors, because that is the role of a free society, and the role of the First Amendment is making sure that we are equipping young people to deal with the world that they will shortly become voters. So again, you saw this in some of our policies when we talk about how important it is to keep this top of mind. So now I want to move to the definition that we see in House Bill 710. And this really is where you see that link between the previous, laws and then this new law that we will be working with, where we see again harmful to minors and that three-pronged definition. The formatting looks different, but the concepts are absolutely there. Appealing to the prurient interest of minors as judged by the average person, applying contemporary community standards, depicting or describing, patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community with respect to what is suitable materials for minors, and not, taking with this when the work is considered as a whole and in context with what it is used, not having serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. So we see the direct connection between House Bill 710 and its definition, both of its definition of what materials are harmful to minors. And again, this is why we're so confident in the policy that we've created. This does beg the question why there is so much confusion around this and so much misinformation. And I think that this is something that really is how the bill and its purposes have been described by its proponents and how we have been invited or asked really in some ways to expand the definition of harmful to minors. This is on the day that when we learned that Governor Little signed House Bill 710. This is a blog post that was posted by the Idaho Family Policy Center. Idaho Family Policy Center, as you may remember, was heavily involved in 314 last year and also this year with 710. And in this blog post, it references that the Children's School and Library Protection Act will finally address the widespread library porn issue in a meaningful way. And so that to me is reframing what this bill does in a way that we don't see it in the bill itself, and really don't see that the laws that we operate in support. And this brings us back to some of those secret folders that we've seen about materials that are so harmful that we can't have people see them. This is the study that's referenced in that, where did this idea of a widespread problem in school and public libraries come from? This was the study in 2023 that looked across 50 public and school libraries in Idaho for books. Spoiler, we were one of the libraries that was in it, and these are the titles that were, oh no, Carrie, what did I do? There you go, I recovered. So these are the books that were, if you had these books in your collection, that you were one of the libraries that was making pornography and obscene materials available for children. These are books that we have. Is perfectly normal, is both in our youth services area, that is for ages 10 and up. It's an American Academy of Men's book on puberty. Dreaming in Cuban is in our adult fiction section. It is a Pulitzer Prize winning book about family in Cuba. Genderqueer and is in our graphic section. This is also a book that is quite frequently one of those books where 1 or 2 pages is pulled out and used as an example of porn, where again, when you're not looking at the whole book, you may have a different opinion. Fun Home is an adult graphic novel, and All Boys Aren't Blue is a memoir in our teen section. These are all books that were brought into our collection with our previous policy, and we believe that they will remain in our collection, that they are not obscene materials, they are not harmful to minors. But the rhetoric that we have seen around, these books are so traumatizing just does not play out when you actually start to look at the definition of obscenity, the definition of harmful to minors. So again, this is where we have to be really thoughtful about protecting First Amendment access, protecting minors access to First Amendment and really being thoughtful about how we're describing what is obscenity and how we're describing harmful to minors. So one of the things that we just really want to make sure is we're really clear, and you see this in our policy, and you definitely see this in our form, is if you are asking us, if you are filing a written notice alleging material harmful to minors, it has to be going to this three-prong analysis. Prominently appeals to the purity and interest of minors. That's a community standard. It portrays patently offensive sexual content, again, a community standard. And then taken as a whole and in context, has no serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for older normal minors. Again, that's a reasonable older normal minors standard. So when we looked at what we needed to update, first off, we did not believe that we needed to update our collection development policy. Again, we are not bringing in obscene materials. So that stood. Absolutely needed to update our policy 5.02 and then the form that goes with it. So starting July 1st, our process for reviewing requests for reconsideration will include two ways an item can be challenged. You'll see that there's sort of a point A, part A and a part B in our form. There's first is the written request to reconsider materials. Maybe that's a location request. But then there is also this written notice alleging materials harmful to minors. Another change that we've made in our policy is for each submission, a case file will be created and uploaded to the library's website. This was important in terms of that transparency. What are the books that people are challenging? What are the ways that we are analyzing this? We've also needed to change the timeline. So the library director will now have 28 days to provide a written response. And the library board of trustees will have 32 days to review the director's decision. And the board has the ability to adopt that, to modify it, to issue your own decision. And so this is what is required by the law. And then if an individual who submitted a written notice alleging materials harmful to minors does not find the board's response satisfactory, they can sue the library district. So we made sure that the policy addresses that. And I want to talk about a couple of things, what has not changed and what has changed in this. So first off, our review process needs to be impartial. And I think this is something that was really important for us to remember as a staff. We will need to take every response one at a time, review our collection development, possibly how that book or that material was submitted, how did it come into our collection, review our supporting exhibits and our regulations. We will apply this three-prong analysis, which is why we've asked our person who's doing the written notice to work with us on that. And then we really will consider dutifully all these requests. That is what the law requires of it, but also that is the work that we think is a responsible library we should be doing. So that hasn't changed. What has changed is the request for reconsideration being publicly available on the library website. That will be new for us. I'll be working with, between now and July 1st to make sure we've got we've got a website that can handle that now. So it'll be good to put that in place. We've also needed to shorten and collapse the staff and director review. So you'll remember from our previous policy, it went from staff to director to board. In order to meet that 60-day window and to give all of you as much time, we are collapsing the staff and director review. So we will no longer have separate responses from staff and from the director. And then the last piece, and you'll also see this in the policy, is we are recommending that the library board president have significant discretion in how we meet that 60-day deadline. This will help us prioritize good faith submissions. We don't have a limit on the number of requests. There's no resident restrictions in this law. There's no card holder restrictions. So we need to give the board president the discretion to make sure we are the that we are prioritizing how staff and board respond accordingly. And then one of the things I want to talk about also is the role of the library trustees in this. Obviously, your first role is you are responsible for ensuring that the Boise Public Library is in compliance with the Children's School and Library Protection Act and all other applicable laws. So you see reference to those in our policy. And you see that in what we've shared and discussed. And then you'll also need to review every complaint impartially. This is the case where we really do want to make sure we're prioritizing good faith and really having that discussion with our community about our materials and our collections. And then this one, I think we just need to make sure that we don't make any decision to limit access to materials lightly. We need to consider First Amendment protection and our core library values. Quite frankly, the way this law is constructed, if you make the decision not to censor materials, that's appealable. Someone can take that to court. But the decision to censor is unappealable. So that responsibility needs to be really top of mind in any trustee discussion. And I think that is, part of what you asked us to really consider in April, and I wanted to bring that back to you because I think this is such an important point and why having a local library board of trustees is so critical to making sure that community standard is understood and upheld. And then finally, I referenced this, we are working on the assumption that the Children's School and Library Protection Act will go into effect on July 1st. And so we plan to have in place, and we'll have completed this. First off, we will on July 1st have an updated policy and support materials on our website. We will have printed copies of that new request for reconsideration form at all of our locations. We will have a website where those requests can be submitted and those case files start to be built. There are more details in the policy specifically about what would be in that case file. We also will have an email address so that this is where someone can just quickly send in a submission. And then we'll also be spending time orienting library staff to understand this new law and their role in this as well. So we want to make sure that we are really focused on how do we have a conversation with our community about what this law means, but also really what it doesn't mean, because I want to make sure that we're grounded in the First Amendment as we are really looking at what is obscene and what are materials harmful to minors. And that, I appreciate I think this is the longest you guys have let me go.
I can see some people are. I really, really appreciate all the time that you put in this information. It's really, really helpful, both for the policy, but also for us to remember and when those come up that we might be using them on reading this year. See. Yeah,
We'll find out.
So thank you, and thank you to Ed. I know Ed's put in a ton of time on this.
And Kathy as well.
And I'm sure others, but
Yes.
those are the ones that I'm particularly aware of. So I really, really appreciate it. And I think it's really thoughtful and well put together. That said, questions, comments?
Regarding the policy, after reviewing it, it was clear to me that there was substantial legal input. I'm saying that maybe comprehensively enough. Looks like it really came from legal. It looks very thorough. And it's clear that all the various aspects of the law were evaluated and brought down into the policy. So I felt very good about what I read. And personally, I'm going to vote for approval.
Thank you, Brian. I really want to make sure I've given everybody a chance. So do you have thoughts or comments on?
No, I would echo Brian's thoughts about the policy. I had a question about the actual form.
Okay.
So if a patron either in-state, out-of-state, whatever, chooses to fill out one of these forms, and they say, yeah, I'm only gonna fill out lines A, B, and dot I and whatever, and leave out all this other information that we are requesting, right? Are we legally allowed to just reject it based on the fact that they have not filled it out in, Toto, they haven't bothered to
Yeah.
say why, why it's obscene, or, describe why it doesn't fall into the various things that you've got.
Yeah, so we'll find out, and I think from the, previous request for consideration that we've had, we tried, there's lots of times people just say NA, or they put a slash mark, they're people fill it out as complete as they want to. The one place that we have really held that we wouldn't consider something if it wasn't signed and we didn't have that person signing off on understanding that they're submitting something, understanding that it becomes a public record. Everything else that we have really used in our previous request for reconsideration, we've taken them as they are at face value with as much or as little information as they include. I think we'll try that. We'll see how that goes. I do think that the signature understanding what it means to make a formal request, to me, is the piece that we will still make sure that before any staff time is put into it, that we have that in place. And then on a case by case basis, we'll take a look and see what's submitted.
If I could add, I think it's sort of important to note that it essentially doesn't matter what we do, because, and I don't say that facetiously, there's no deference like there would be in other kind of administrative actions. So to me, I think it's prudent to take that into consideration, what's in the form, together with what staff gathers and knows about kind of the value of the material, why it's in the collection. But at the end of the day, if we don't move the book, they can sue, kind of regardless of what really our decision says or what our process was.
So
Yeah.
if I can express, say in a legal defense, are we in a stronger case if we have a form that is, if we say we're going to reject somebody's reconsideration request, and the form that's only got 3 lines filled in versus every single line filled in, sort of, do we want to go back then to the patron and say, please fill out the rest of it? I'm trying to think in terms of how we are in strong assumption that somebody fills out a request, are unhappy with our result, and then look.
And according to this policy, that using those forms isn't even required. They can just submit a written notice of any kind.
Yeah, so the form is.
I think even legal aside, to me, it's prudent to kind of make the best record, and I think do our job on our side of analyzing sort of that First Amendment question about why is this in our collection, what's its value, sort of regardless. I think it matters like how or if they obtain the material and some things like that. And I think the policy does speak into kind of the discretion. I think we have discretion to have them come in and answer questions even at a board meeting, or to kind of determine how we want to go forward with that kind of request. But I would err on, I think we want to create a fuller record if we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
But we can also, I mean, I think we'll see how it works.
And I'll just add a little bit maybe for you, Ron. The way that the law is written, if you look at what's required for a written notice, it's not much. So it's just a written notice that they ask for relocation of material to a section designated for adults only within 60 days. That's what the law says. So we will look at everything that is written and submitted.
aside from the policy, coming back to some comments I made in previous conversations, there is no amount of surprises and challenges that can be forced on you in litigation by a well-funded and committed opponent. You think you got everything covered, this is what the law says. When you get in litigation, it's a whole lot different. And the best thing you can do is try and build a web of defenses that makes it very difficult. And the only thing that I can think of that you still might explore, you know, the form maybe is one, but signage possibly and segregation. And just be thinking about those in the future. This can be an evolution of how we put the proper defenses to give us strength if we do get in litigation. So that's the first point I'd just like to make. It's everybody's got a role here to try and flush out ideas on things that can help us build a better defense for the library. And then the second point is, when we do get in some sort of challenge, fight. Do not settle, fight. And when you've won, extract the maximum legal fees and damages that you can so that people understand we don't take this lightly. And if you're going to attack us unfairly, we're coming at you.
It's an interesting question. I'm not even sure how settlement would work in this, but I've been thinking about that as well. But yeah, I don't think this is the type of thing where settlement would even make sense. So essentially at the end of the day, unless we're kind of removing a book, we're asking the court to tell us whether or not it's protected. That's kind of how it's set up. So we're essentially set up to, yes, potentially have a lot of legal challenges. And I do think we have to see how this ends up getting interpreted. If there's court cases, and this will be kind of an evolution as we see what happens.
Okay. I'll just make a comment, which is that I hope that in this sort of really large struggle that we've gone through, that the tendency among many libraries will be to simply stop acquiring books that have any risk of change.
Yeah, stick with our policy.
Reshma, did you have thoughts or comments? You looked like you were ready to say something.
No, I just want to say I sat with Ed and Jessica was there. I think that helped from legal point of view. As you know, Ryan said, you never know till it comes. So, but I think the way we prepare ourselves and benefit of doubt from both sides. I think that's the way to go.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Small points of clarification for me, and it's just my own question, the policy's beautifully written. In the past, requests for reconsideration, I was under the saying that all of them made it all the way up to the board. They would kind of go through staff and director, and if it was escalated or at the request of the patron, it might come to us, which I've not seen in my term here. However, in this case, it sounds like all requests for reconsideration and establishment of a material as harmful to minors would be fully passed on all the way to the board.
Correct,
Am I reading
and
that
I did,
correctly?
yes, I should have
Okay.
put that on the what changes.
Yeah.
You're, yes, that is an important change.
All come all the
All
way
of
through
them
the
will-
process.
All of them will come to you.
Perfect. And then the second key point, and again, because I've asked about this a couple times, I want to make sure I understand. In the policy, page 26, only a minor who obtained material harmful to minors from the Boise Public Library or their parent or legal guardian can submit a written notice. So calling out that means for us, a minor or someone must have obtained this material from us. It would not be someone from another place has a list and submits a list and says, we believe these to be harmful. We need to say that someone has actually accessed this material and it's part of the Boise collection, that part was cleared from the consortium. But that's where we're standing, and is that also for the request for reconsideration, not just on harmful material?
The request for reconsideration, you're supposed to have a library card and
Okay,
that's
for that
on
whole-
there. But the
Okay.
other piece, and Ed, feel free to chime in, that is on the form. How did you or did you obtain this material, and also did you check it out? Because that's the way the law reads as I've read it.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
That's a good.
you knew the previous policy really well to see those changes.
Been a lot of time.
Yes, you
And
have.
it's important to know, I think, and be prepared for. Okay, that's it.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, I can make a motion myself, right?
And one,
Yes.
just one other thing before you do that, I do wanna just reiterate, this is a policy that we bring back annually to the board. So one of the things that we will be doing is really having a discussion about this on an annual basis, and so this is there's some unknowns, and the next time we come back to it, we have some, I think, more experience with it. And then the other piece that I neglected to mention, I included, Governor Little's transmittal letter in your packet. Because he did talk about his concern, he signed this bill, he did mention some of his concerns about how it would be enacted.
He's almost monitoring that letter. I'm watching you.
But he did say, I've signed this, and like many Idahoans, I'll be watching the implementation and outcomes of this legislation very closely. And I think it's on really all of us to help him with that. And so one of the things, part of this, why we had this real push for transparency is so that we can start to show to elected officials, hey, we made this law, we've implemented it, we're gonna take you up on this offer of understanding what that meant for our collection. And finally, to Ron's point, I agree that we talked about this, is why we didn't think it was necessary, that potential chilling effect. Well, maybe I won't purchase that book because if I don't purchase it, then no one can challenge it being in our library. And so I really appreciate your remarks. I know that our collection development team appreciates that because we really do, going back to our core values, we want to have materials that reflect all of Boise, and people should continue to expect to see their experience in the library.
I would entertain a motion if we've got one.
Sure. I move to approve the updated policy 5.02 as presented to be effective as of July 1st, 2024, unless the Children's School and Library Protection Act is joined by court order prior to the effective date.
Right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, could we get a roll call, Karen?
Kamal. Yes. Plenty.
Yes.
Lemons.
Yes.
Wisniewski.
Yes.
And Kara.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you all for the really thoughtful discussion, and I know everyone's put a lot of time and thought into understanding all of these things and thinking through them. And I hope that with passing this today, we give you all the comfort to start moving forward and then hopefully focus on all the great positive things the library does, like summer reading and the programs that we're working on to really improve the community. So thank you, and thank you for all your work. Rebecca, you are next up to review vouchers. Are you available? Okay, great. And we did have conflicts for the next meeting, so we have a proposed to change the meeting date to June 5th, which is not our normal cadence. So I think I need a motion to change the June meeting to June 5th at the same time.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor, or do you want a roll call? We'll roll call.
Yes.
Plenty.
I'm not gonna be able to make it. I'm not gonna be opposed to changing the date.
Lemons.
Yes.
Wisniewski.
Yes.
And Tara.
Yes.
All in favor, motion
Okay, and last would be a motion to adjourn.
carries. To adjourn.
Second.
Okay, you want a roll call? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
We wanted a roll call just because of the nature of the policy changes.
I should have mentioned that, we're starting to do that, one of the reasons we're doing that is because when you're doing it virtually, we